This video is presented by Chesco Sports, your one-stop shop for sports betting content. See the link in the description. Yes people, what we saying? Welcome back to another Dana Whites Contender Series breakdown. Last week we had week 8, which was one of the best weeks that Dana White Contender Series has ever had. This week we've got a good week again, hopefully. But yeah, last week, if you haven't watched those fights from last week, I hugely recommend that you go back and watch Angel Pacheco versus Danny Silva and Ernesto Carrascate versus Carly Judas. The Angel Pacheco versus Danny Silva fight broke the record for the most significant strikes landed in 3 rounds, and the Ernesto Carrascate versus Carly Judas fight came in the top 3 for the most significant strikes landed in 3 rounds. So for those 2 fights to have happened on the same night, that was absolutely huge for Contender Series, especially as, if you've been watching these breakdowns in prior weeks, I've mentioned how this season hasn't been that great. There's been fighters that have looked a bit sloppy and not really deserving of being in this spot. But then you look at last week and you realise that these fighters are just out there trying to fight for contracts and they're giving it their all. So yeah, I massively recommend that you go and watch at least those 2 fights and then come back to watch this breakdown. But we are going to get straight into it. And the first fight of the night, we've got Rocha versus Davi Bittencourt, Davy Costa. Rocha is only 23 years old. So this is always something that I'll look at with my tape study and that sort of thing. When you're looking at fighters that are that young and that kind of not inexperienced, because he has got 17 professional fights, but being that young, they can look completely different from fight to fight. They can look like completely different fighters. So that's something that I'll really do take into consideration when I'm watching tape and kind of looking to form some sort of breakdown for these fights. That's always something I'll look at. So his last fight was at LFA 159, where he beat Matias de Silva via unanimous decision. It was a close fight, to be honest. It was a really close fight. It wasn't as cut and dry as it may look, being a unanimous decision. But then we look at Davi Bittencourt, who's 28 years old. He's got the afro. He's going to be donning the afro in the Contender Series. So yeah, again, he's fought at LFA as well, but his last fight was at Shuto Brazil 112, where he defeated Felipe Gano by rear naked choke. And that's somewhere that I think in this fight, he's going to have a big advantage. I think he's going to have a big advantage in the grappling department in this fight. That's Davi Costa that I'm talking about. I think he's going to have a big grappling advantage over Rocha, because in the last few fights that I've watched of Rocha, he has been taken down quite easily. He doesn't seem that comfortable when he's on the ground. He kind of loses positions trying to get back to his feet and doing it quite sloppily. And that kind of puts him in precarious positions. In his last fight, in the first round, he almost got rear naked choked. He was stuck in a body triangle for over 4 minutes of that first round. And he just couldn't seem to get anywhere near of getting out of it. So that's a massive advantage that I see for Davi Costa in this fight. I think he's got a big grappling advantage because his wrestling entries aren't that bad. They come from the outside quite a far bit from the outside. He doesn't really set up his takedowns a lot, which is a bit of an issue that I see with his game. He doesn't really set up those wrestling entries, doesn't really set up those takedowns. So they are quite telegraphed and they do come from the outside quite often, because he does like to keep quite a big distance from his opponent, and he likes to try and use his leg kicks to get into range. But that's something he does quite well. He manages the distance quite well. I do think Rocha does have a very slight striking edge in this fight, because Davi Costa isn't the most technical striker. He is quite sloppy, tends to overextend quite often. But when I'm talking about Rocha having the striking edge, it's very slightly, because I don't think his striking's that great either. I think there's times where he looks quite sloppy with his striking. He doesn't really set up his combos. He kind of just blitzes into range with a flurry of strikes with his hands down, and it kind of leaves his defence open. So that's somewhere that in this fight, if he does blitz in and catch Davy Costa, he could finish him. But if he does that and leaves his hands down and just kind of comes in with a bunch of strikes, he could find himself just getting taken down and then controlled on the ground. That's where I do see this fight playing out for the large part of it, and where I'm kind of leaning to. I'm leaning to the fact that Davy Costa's got that big grappling and wrestling advantage, and I do think he's going to make that pay in this fight. So for my prediction, I think I'm edging with Davy Bittencourt round 2 rear naked choke. And then in the second fight of the night, we've got Mauricio Ruffy versus Raimond Magomedaliev. This one is a really, really good fight. Raimond has fought at as high as middleweight before, whereas Ruffy has fought at lightweight before, so you may see that there is a really big size differential in this fight, which obviously really benefits Magomedaliev in this one. Obviously, Magomedaliev's he fights out of Dagestan, so you put 2 and 2 together and you could say that he is very dominant on the ground. Having said that, the most of the tape that I've watched of this guy, he is a good striker. He keeps the fight on the feet and only really goes for the takedowns if they present themselves. And most of the time they come from clinch exchanges up against the cage, where he just scores a takedown when he's got his opponent against the cage. I haven't really seen him shoot from the open mat, and kind of seen him. I haven't really seen him shoot from the outside, is what I'm trying to say. In the tie clinch position, he's very, very dominant. He looks very, very good in the tie clinch, where he pummels in knees to the body, elbows to the face. He's very, very good in that position. Just looking at his record more in depth, because this is important, I think. He's fought the likes of Impa Kasangane and Anthony Njoku. Granted, Anthony Njoku isn't the best, but Impa Kasangane is currently fighting in PFL, where, if I remember correctly, he's one fight away from winning the $1 million. Has obviously fought in the UFC before, so he has got wins over UFC caliber guys, and has fought in the likes of one championship before. So he's got a massive experience advantage in this one. He's 33 years old, and in that sense, that kind of tells you a lot about this fight as well, because Contender Series is a lot of times Dana looking for the young up and coming contenders, whereas this guy, he's 33. He's not young. He's not old. He's not an old guy, but he's not young. And Dana always says on Contender Series he doesn't like signing fighters over 30. So it's very interesting to see that they've brought him into Contender Series, when their kind of motto in the Contender Series is to sign young guys. I would say that these two guys are both UFC caliber. I think Magomedaliev definitely is, but then you've got Mauricio Ruffy, who, from what I've seen of him, he's such a fun fighter. He's not got the experience advantage in this one, and he's not really got experience fighting at a very high level at all, to be honest, which is a bit of a concern coming into this one against someone like Magomedaliev. You look at his last fight though against Torres, and he was 41-8. So he has fought guys that have got a lot of experience, but you look down the list and that kind of tails off the further down you go. So that is a bit of a concern for me in this fight. I do think Mauricio has got the striking advantage in this one though. I really hate to make this comparison because it's going to make me sound like a casual, and I really hate it, but his style is a lot like a young McGregor. The way that his hands are down, it's kind of like a karate style, counter punching, slip and counter, that sort of style. And he's a really fun fighter when it comes to that. His striking is really, really it's patient and accurate, and it's very fun to watch, is what I'll say. The thing is though, like I said, Raimond Magomedaliev has got an advantage in the grappling and the wrestling. If he does look for the takedown, I imagine it'll be when he's got Mauricio against the cage and then scores a trip of some sort. I don't really expect to see him try and shoot out in the open unless he's getting lit up on the feet. He may panic shoot. But I do see him having the advantage there, and that's an advantage where you can't really look past because of the fact that he is dominant in that area. In terms of the striking though, it's quite even. I do think it slightly edges Ruffy with the advantage, but again, Magomedaliev is a good striker. He's a very good, powerful striker, and like I said, especially in the clinch exchanges, I think he has an advantage there. He's currently a -220 favourite, with the comeback on Ruffy being +170, which I think's quite. I think that's decent. I think +170 for Ruffy is quite decent. Like I said, it would be a risk taking him because of the fact that he hasn't fought at the highest level. He's not fought that many great contenders. So for his first fight to be his first fight in that sort of limelight, being against someone like Magomedaliev, that could be quite a concern. But as a +170 dog, I don't mind the look of him because, like I said, his striking is really, it's fun and it's accurate, it's powerful, it's fast. So I like that. I'm probably going to edge with Raimond just to edge on the side of caution. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ruffy pick up a finish here. I really wouldn't. I'm going to say Raimond will pick up a decision win, but I really wouldn't be surprised if Mauricio Ruffy pulls off the upset. Next up after that, we go to the light heavyweight division, where we've got Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus José Daniel Medina. Look, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because Gadzhiyasulov is the biggest favourite on the card this week at -810. And that's granted, that's fair, that's a fair line in my opinion. Maybe not a fair line, maybe that's taking it too far. I do think he is a big favourite in this fight. I think his striking's better than José Medina's. He's got a very, very big wrestling advantage in this one. Having said that, he is a very long and rangy light heavyweight. He switches stances quite often, which gives him different looks on his opponents and keeps his opponents guessing on whether he's going to shoot for a takedown or if he's going to stay and stand and strike with him. He's got really good timing on his wrestling as well. He can score takedowns out in the open or up against the cage in the clinch. Like I said, he is very, very long, and he utilises the push kicks and the teep kicks when he's using his kicks out at range. Like I said, being very rangy is something that he does very well. He is going to have a big advantage in this fight in the striking and in the wrestling. So I'm going to say that Gadzhiyasulov's going to pick up he picks up a first round TKO, and I imagine that it'll come from some sort of ground and pound. And then for the next fight, we go to the bantamweight division. We've got Eduardo Torres versus Victor Hugo, striker. He goes by Victor Striker, which is pretty funny. He's fought at the highest of welterweight before, so he's floated about divisions. He's fought at featherweight, welterweight. He's fought at welterweight a few times. So that there is quite. It's pretty mad how he's been fighting at welterweight quite often, and then he's coming in and fighting at bantamweight. He has fought at bantamweight before, so it's not going to be the first time he's fighting at bantamweight. But the fact that he's fought as high as welterweight before is pretty crazy. And then Eduardo Torres, he's fought at featherweight before. His most active division has been in bantamweight. Victor Hugo's fought the higher level guys, in my opinion. You see some of the records of the guys that he's faced. He has faced more experienced opponents than what Torres has. Torres has fought at the likes of Combate Global, which is a good promotion in Mexico and Latin America. But yeah, this fight, how do I see this playing out? I see Victor Silva with a big grappling advantage here. Although he's a fast, explosive striker, he's got a really good grappling advantage. He's a jiu-jitsu specialist. So that's where I see him trying to get this fight. I see him kind of blitzing him with these really explosive strikes, getting Torres against the cage, and then working his takedowns where he's going to look for submissions. Torres he's a good striker. He is a decent striker. He uses his lead leg really well. You'll see him use switch kicks from that lead leg almost all the time. Almost all of his kicking attacks seem to come from his lead leg, and they tend to be switch kicks to the body, switch kicks to the head. You do see him use that lead leg quite often. I see this is just going to be a battle of the kicks for as long as it lasts, and for as long as Victor Hugo doesn't go for the takedown, it's going to be a battle of the kicks, a battle of the explosive striking. I'm slightly edging with Victor Silva here. The odds are quite close. The odds have got it at plus 100 for Torres and a minus 130 comeback for Victor Silva. I think that's probably fair due to the big grappling advantage that Victor Silva has. Like I said, his striking is very fast and explosive as well. So it's not as if he holds just the grappling advantage. He can hold his own in the striking in this one. But Eduardo Torres is someone that's going to stand there and he can take a strike. He's going to stand with his feet planted and he's just going to take shots to return to more of his own. I see this being one of the best fights of the night for as long as it lasts. I'm going to edge with a Victor Silva round 2 submission because I do think his grappling edge overweighs the advantage that Eduardo Torres holds here. So I am going to say Victor Silva round 2 submission. And then in the main event, we've got a real interesting one. Back again at light heavyweight. We've got Rodolfo Bellato versus Murtaza Talha. This one's extremely interesting because from the tape I've watched on both of these guys, they are both going to look to try and get their wrestling and grappling going. Having said that, both of them they're not going to relentlessly look for that. Rodolfo Bellato did show though in his last fight against Akio dos Santos, in which he won the LFA light heavyweight title, that his whole game plan for that fight was to look for the takedown, and that's all he did for 5 rounds really. He just relentlessly went for level changes, and they weren't set up very well at all. He didn't set them up with his striking. He just didn't set them up well. He would just go for the takedown relentlessly and look for that. And that was probably due to Dos Santos not being the most technical of fighters, not being the best fighters. So he was able to do that over 5 rounds. Do I see him doing that in this fight? Do I see him just relentlessly looking for the takedown? No, because Murtaza Talha has a very good base of jiu-jitsu, and you can see there he's got 3 wins by submission already, 3 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and all of his knockouts pretty much come on the ground. He's very powerful. I think he's got the grappling advantage in this fight. I do think he's got the grappling advantage. If the fight does go to the ground, if he finds himself on the bottom, we'll see him looking for submissions from the bottom. If we see him on top, we'll see him looking to use his relentless ground and pound, because his ground and pound is very powerful. He generates such a massive amount of power from such a short distance while he's on the ground. Most of his takedowns that he does land come against the cage, where he's got a body lock and then he scores a trip. Similarly with Rodolfo Bellato, most of his takedowns come when he's pushed his opponent up against the cage. In that last fight, like I said, I don't think any of his takedowns came from out in the open. They all came from him just pushing forward, not even striking his way into range, just pushing forward, dominating the cage, getting his opponent against the cage and then level changing. Neither of these guys are the best when it comes to striking. I think Bellato holds a slight advantage when it comes to the striking. This is going to be his second fight. This is going to be his second fight in the Contender Series. His first fight was against Vitor Petrino, where he was knocked out, but he came close to finishing that fight in the first round. He had Petrino hurt. He had him on the ground. He rocked him with a punch that subsequently dropped him, and then he got to his back. He wasn't able to finish it, but he's going to be looking to go one better this time and pick up a win. He's 27 years old, whereas Talha is 27 as well. So they're both on the right side of 30. So whoever wins this, I do expect to see given a contract. The odds at the moment are very in favour of Murtaza Talha at -315 with a +230 comeback. I think it's closer than what the odds suggest. I really do. I think, like I said, Bellato has a slight striking advantage in my opinion. I think Murtaza Talha is more erratic with his striking. He's when he strikes, he doesn't really keep in mind his defence. He doesn't keep his hands up. He kind of just gets erratic with it. I would say he's probably got a slight power advantage. But what's interesting is Rodolfo Bellato holds a big reach advantage in this one. He's 6'3" as opposed to Murtaza Talha at 6 foot, which isn't the biggest for light heavyweight. He's not the biggest light heavyweight. So yeah, I do see Bellato having a striking advantage here. It just depends whether Talha can get this fight against the cage and then work for a takedown where he's going to find a submission. Because if he does find this fight on the ground and he's on top, he probably will find a submission because he just does it so well. And even if he doesn't find a submission, he's going to control there and use really heavy ground and pound because that's what he does best. I'm slightly edging towards Talha, but like I said, with the odds being this kind of far apart and getting good value on Rodolfo Bellato, I do think that there is a chance that he could pull off the upset. But I am going to edge with Murtaza Talha, and I'm going to say he gets a round 2 submission. But yeah, that is the main event. So that ends the video, and that is the full breakdown for Dana White's Contender Series Week 9. If you do want to see the rest of the plays for this card, and any other cards for that matter, go and check out the betting guide, which is in the description. You'll find a link to that in the description. We've got write-ups for most of the UFC cards, any other promotions, any other sport that you might be interested in. You might be able to find some plays for them. So yeah, go and check out the betting guide. Link is in the description, and I'll catch you for the next one.